Rarity groaned lowly as she pulled her old bones over the last fallen tree. Panting heavily, she let out a long sigh. She hadn't even traveled this far into the Everfree Forest when she was young and in her prime. Now here she was, almost in the middle of it, and looking at a cavernous den of trees. Shaking her head slowly, she adjusted the old Stetson she was wearing. She smiled a bit as she thought of the only thing she'd brought with her, the last physical piece of her mate that she had with her, and it would be with her until the end. Starting to stretch a bit to relieve some of the pain in her old bones, Rarity shook her head. It really was a pain to be old. She did still enjoy many things in life. Though she couldn't sew anymore, she could still see the new fashions. Though her bones ached from long walks, she could still sit at a cafe and let the world walk by her. She found pleasures in life, but she knew that she was on the decline. She had to make this journey before she got too old to complete her last task for Applejack. Though admittedly, it was one she had assigned to herself.
Well, darling, it has been a bit, hasn't it? The farm's doing well under the new management, so no need to worry about that. I will have you know, though, your daughter is completely insufferable. I almost had to sneak out today, like I was a fool who couldn't look after herself.
Rarity chuckled to herself and smiled. Whenever the kids were being inconvenient, they were Applejack's children, not her own. But when one was successful, they were, of course, hers.
Well, darling, I do hope you will take this last adventure with me, won't you?
Rarity starts to walk towards the shadow entrance of the warped trees.
Oh, good. I always knew you'd be by my side forever.
She grinned. She only talked to Applejack in private. She couldn't have ponies thinking she was crazy, and no matter what anyone said or believed, Rarity was certain that her love was still with her until the end of time itself, and they'd be together. Rarity didn't have to duck to enter. The passageway was absolutely massive. She looked about her, somewhat apprehensive to find what she was looking for, but determined to complete the task.
I don't know why I'm so nervous, darling. I mean, what's the worst that can happen?
She paused, pretending to hear an answer.
Well, you are just a bag full of cheer today, aren't you? I'll have you know that I am going to complete this task.
Another long pause.
No, I do not sound like Rainbow Dash. She says that no matter what. I only say it when it's true.
Further into the shadowed tunnels, Rarity walked, alone to the world. But to her, to Rarity, she was not alone. Her old friend and love of her life accompanied her, even unto the darkness of uncertainty that she walked into. She was never alone anymore, ever since they had said their vows. Since then, even then far apart, even when indefinable distances separated them, she had Applejack with her. And that, more than anything, was why she was here. She didn't care that she was more or less lost. She knew that she was in the right place. She'd followed the tracks carefully back to this place, back to the very center of the Everfree Forest. She finally found the clearing she'd been looking for, smiling as she stepped out into the sun of the opening. The clearing was lined with trees, unnaturally close to each other to form a solid wall. The timberwolf that had made the enclosure was busy sunning itself in the center of the clearing, but it immediately reacted when another creature entered its clearing. Standing up straight, it glared at the little pony. Not just a little, minuscule compared to the wolf's size. Rarity, for her part, was looking up, an enormous beast that drooled looking at her. It could have made about 4 or 5 bites of her. But Rarity smiled at it. That wasn't about to happen. She straightened up as well, and the creature looked confused. It wasn't used to anything but cowering and running, though it wasn't about to be intimidated in its own den. It coiled back and launched itself at the white unicorn. Rarity, for her own part, knew she didn't stand a chance. But she didn't care. She had gathered all her might. While she couldn't manipulate her magic in fine ways anymore, she could still use it. Summoning everything she could, she took a deep breath, waiting until the massive creature was on top of her. And when its jaws opened to bite her in half, she unleashed everything she had into its mouth. Rarity smiled as she rolled the old Stetson in front of her, giggling as she used her magic to push it across the apple farms, rolling it on its rim like it was a wheel. There were a few sidelong glances from the new ones tending to the farm, but no one said anything. Rarity huffed a bit as the hat stopped, nestled up against the old farm door. But happily, she wasn't out of breath at all. She was revitalized in a way she hadn't thought possible. She giggled a bit to herself as she thought back to the moment before she blasted the giant timberwolf into pieces. Well, mostly pieces. There was still a rather large piece left, but that was neither here nor there. It wouldn't be hurting any other pony. No one else would lose their loved one to it. Her eyes lit up as Rarity heard a voice she had been longing to truly hear again. "You ready to go, Sugar Cube? I've been waiting for you."
Support me on Patreon. Subscribe and make sure to ring that notification bell to know when I post new content. And please, feel free to join the Lotus Garden. Links in the description. Thanks for listening, and look forward to more. Good night, every pony.